Alright boys, I don't think I've ever seen this in boxing before. Jake Paul hasn't just stirred up the boxing world. He's got legends, world champions, heavyweights, promoters, pundits, everybody sending out warning shots. And not little friendly warnings either. I'm talking full-blown, bro, don't do this, your life might change permanently type warnings. And the craziest part? Jake Paul does not care. He's still walking toward Anthony Joshua like it's just another Tuesday. Today, we're breaking down the insane list of fighters and boxing pros who have warned Jake Paul about stepping into the ring with AJ. Some of these quotes are brutal, some are funny, some are downright terrifying. Before we get into the warnings, you gotta understand why the whole boxing world is acting like Jake Paul is walking into a burning house with a blindfold on. Anthony Joshua is not just a heavyweight. He's not just a former unified champion. He's a physical anomaly. A dude built like an action figure who hits like a truck driving downhill with no brakes. He's the guy who knocked out Francis Ngannou in 2 rounds, and the punch didn't even fully land clean. Ngannou, the same guy who dropped Tyson Fury. That Ngannou. Joshua melted him, deleted the save file. People genuinely thought Ngannou might have been gone permanently after that. So imagine seeing Jake Paul walk into that same danger zone. A YouTuber turned boxer, a guy whose best win is against a retired MMA fighter at cruiserweight, stepping up to fight a heavyweight knockout merchant who once folded a man the size of a refrigerator. That's why every boxer with a pulse is chiming in. That's why the boxing world is sending out public service announcements like it's a missing person alert. They're not hating, they're not trolling, they're actually concerned. But Jake is moving like he's the final boss. He's walking around saying, "Give me AJ, I want him next." People are stunned. So let's break down the madness, because the warnings are piling up. David Haye didn't sugarcoat anything. The man literally said, "I genuinely fear for Jake Paul's life." Bro, that's not a warning. That's a straight-up obituary template. Haye's a former 2-weight world champion. He's been in there with killers. He knows what real heavyweight power feels like, and he's looking at Jake Paul like, this kid has no idea what he's signing up for. Haye said that if Jake steps in with Joshua, the danger isn't just losing, it's serious long-term damage. And the way he said it? It wasn't exaggerated influencer talk. It was calm, serious, like someone explaining what happens if you walk onto a highway blindfolded. When someone with David Haye's resume says he's worried for your life, that's when you pause everything and reconsider your decisions. Jake looked at that and said, "Cool. Next question." Carl Froch came through with some of the coldest quotes of the entire conversation. Froch said, "This might be the end of his life." Bro, what? Carl Froch is not a guy who exaggerates. He's one of the most brutal, honest fighters ever. He'll tell you exactly what's on his mind, and he will not try to soften the blow. And when Froch says something like that, he means exactly what he's saying. He's looking at the size difference. AJ walks around at 250. Jake is walking around at 205, maybe 210. That's a different species. Froch said Jake has done well for himself, but there's levels. And then there's galaxies. And Joshua is in another galaxy. Jake still hasn't blinked. Then Amir Khan entered the chat. Khan doesn't even try to dress things up. He basically said Joshua would kill Jake Paul. Literally used the word kill. And honestly, Khan's perspective makes sense. He's fought at the highest level. He's felt real power. He's been knocked out brutally. He knows exactly what happens when someone bites off more than they can chew. Jake didn't care. This one made headlines. Derek Chisora, a man who speaks like he's lived through every war in history, said, "Anthony Joshua would leave Jake Paul in an ambulance." He wasn't joking. He wasn't laughing. He was basically saying, "Jake, you've had a good run. Go home now." Chisora respects Jake's hustle, but he knows what happens when heavyweights land clean. And Jake isn't a heavyweight, not even close. Jake Paul read that and said, "So when can we do the press conference?" This one went viral fast. Moses Itama, one of the most hyped heavyweight prospects in the world right now, said Jake Paul needs to fire his advisor immediately. That's when you know people are genuinely worried. Itama wasn't trolling. He wasn't insulting. He was genuinely concerned for Jake Paul's well-being, basically saying someone in Jake's circle is giving him the completely wrong advice and setting him up for disaster. He also added that AJ hits way too hard and Jake shouldn't even joke about that fight. Jake Paul is joking about it. A lot. Then we have Eddie Hearn. Now Hearn is a promoter. This man sells fights for a living. If a fight exists, Eddie will hype it. He once promoted KSI versus Logan Paul like it was Ali versus Frazier. But even Eddie Hearn is warning Jake Paul. Eddie said Jake might never be the same again if Joshua hits him clean. And he said it in such a casual way, like he was talking about forgetting your headphones when going to the gym. When a promoter, the guy whose entire job is to hype the match and sell the fight, is saying, "This might actually end terribly," that's not a good sign. Jake Paul saw that and said, "Okay, but what date works best?" Dana White has been clowning Jake Paul for years. He's the last person who would defend Jake. But even Dana is saying this is a terrible idea. He said Jake is going to get humbled, and that he hopes the kid understands the difference between clout boxing and real heavyweight competition. When Dana White is warning you about your boxing opponent, bro, something is off. Jake Paul didn't care. He's on Instagram calling out AJ to meet him at a catchweight. Madness. Frank Warren came out and basically said the fight is so risky that AJ's entire legacy could be at stake if he loses. But the subtext here is clear. The only reason this fight is even being talked about is because Jake brings a massive audience. The danger? It makes Jake look like he's trying to jump through the final level of a video game without even beating level 3. Jake Paul loves that. That's Jake's entire brand. Joe Rogan absolutely lost his mind when this topic came up on the podcast. He said the fight is not competitive. At all. Zero. Jake Paul has no business stepping in with a guy who can knock out Ngannou with one shot. Rogan said Joshua is too big, too powerful, too fast, and too experienced. His reaction was basically the equivalent of watching someone trying to fight a bear with a butter knife. Jake Paul shrugged and went, "Put it on Netflix." George Groves came through with that calm, intellectual, brutally honest breakdown only Groves can give. He basically said the fight makes zero sporting sense, and that Jake Paul is skipping 10 levels of the game before beating even level 3. Groves wasn't insulting Jake's hustle. He actually said Jake has improved a lot. But then he reminded everyone that improvement doesn't mean you jump straight into the deep end with a 2-time heavyweight champion. Groves said Joshua's strength, experience, and pedigree would overwhelm Jake instantly. Not in round 6, not in round 3, instantly. And he added that Jake Paul is still fighting guys who retired, or guys who never boxed professionally. Now he wants Anthony Joshua? Groves said it bluntly. Jake isn't ready, and he won't be ready for years. Jake Paul heard that and doubled down on wanting the fight. Tony Bellew had one of the most emotional reactions, because Bellew loves the sport. He lives and breathes boxing, and he's someone who hates seeing mismatches that could go wrong. Bellew said if Jake Paul steps into the ring with AJ, that's not just a risk, that's a horrifying mismatch. Bellew's main point was this: Jake has fought celebrities. He's fought retired athletes. He's fought MMA guys who didn't punch hard even during their prime. But AJ? That's someone who has knocked out some of the biggest, strongest men on earth. That's someone who ended careers. That's someone who hits harder than 99% of the sport's history. Bellew said it clearly. Jake Paul has never been hit like Anthony Joshua will hit him. And Bellew's tone wasn't cocky, it was concerned. Because Bellew's seen fighters get seriously hurt from far, far less. Jake shrugged it off like it was light work. Simon Jordan is hilarious because he criticizes everyone. Promoters, fighters, YouTubers, influencers, nobody is safe. And he absolutely cooked this matchup. Jordan said the fight is a turd polished into a mega event. Translation, it's a spectacle, not a sport. But the part that matters for Jake is this. Jordan said if AJ hits Jake clean even once, he's going to be hurt badly. He even questioned whether this fight should legally be sanctioned because Jake Paul has never taken a punch from a man AJ's size, strength, or skill level. Jordan said Jake is stepping into a world he doesn't belong in. Then he said Jake can talk a big game, he can market himself, but if Joshua fights him seriously, the result is inevitable. Jake posted another Twitter call out an hour later. Look, let's keep it real. Could Jake win? Technically, yes. Anyone can win in boxing. But realistically, nah. You're talking about a man who was built to knock out human beings. Jake is built to entertain subscribers. Jake's best hope is catching AJ with something weird early. But AJ's not Tyron Woodley. He's not Ben Askren. He's not even a retired boxer. He's a legit heavyweight monster who deletes people. Jake is stepping into something he has never experienced before. But this is why people love him. He's fearless, or delusional, or both. And both sell PP views. At the end of the day, Jake Paul has been warned by legends, champions, promoters, heavyweights, UFC bosses, literally everyone. And he still wants the smoke. And whether you love him or hate him, you gotta respect the hustle. You gotta respect the fearlessness. Or at least, the entertainment value. But if Jake Paul actually walks into the ring with Anthony Joshua, the world is going to stop for a minute. Because that fight is either going to be one of the craziest upsets of all time, or one of the biggest mismatches ever put on a global platform. Let me know what you think. Does Jake have a chance? Should the fight even happen? Or is this just pure chaos for clicks? Hit subscribe for more breakdowns, and I'll catch you in the next one.